And I loved this question, what can we learn from water? I have to say that Thomas gave me that question. And I'm just curious if any of you all want to respond to that as well or build on anything that Thomas said.
I actually would like to build on the idea of like systems change as an essential part of like the ethical dimension that we're looking at, and particularly what we do and don't value, because there is a very real pathway to a very specific economic kind of system change at the federal level right now. There's a proposal for natural capital accounting. It would require any government or any developmental project, for example, that the United States government is going to undertake to literally put a dollar price on the ecosystem services that they would either be augmenting or more likely than not disrupting and diminishing as a result of a development. So let's say if instead of the state of Utah and the Utah Transit Port Authority being at the behest of 9,000 acres of nature loss in outside of Ogden, it was the federal government. If this natural capital accounting law passed, they would literally have to put a dollar price on the loss of water quality and the irreparable damage to bird habitat and so on and so forth. But the forces are really against us. Even in a very supportive Biden administration, there's a lot of hesitancy from those within the system that ostensibly and actually really has made a lot of great progress for conservation federally to do what we need it to do, to put like actual policy to systems change and cultural change, and in this case, literally valuing nature. And I just kind of wanted to point out how that's actually bleeding. The leadership against that is coming from the state of Utah, from people like U.S. House of Representatives member John Curtis, who is doing his darndest to stop us federally from being able to put a value on nature economically. And you know that trickles down into the state processes and operations relating to like what the cost of sacrificing people and sacrificing land and water could ever possibly be. And so I think, you know, that begets a bigger question then of like, what does it take to be in control? Who can and can't be in control? Like, we're probably all thinking about how you-know-who is still gonna be able to run for office, but others who have the same charges against him won't be able to vote for him or anybody else, right? And so as much as, and as true and as essential as like systems change is really essential, I just find myself in a place right now where it's like, yes, that's true, but like, where do we go from there? Like, is it more about, it's a conversation about democracy and what's right with it and what's wrong with it. So no answers, but I'll leave it there where mine's at.
Yeah, I think, thank you. I really appreciate those comments, because it really, the truth is, it's politics too, right? It's asked the question, what are we going to do? And I look at folks, some of these people who are running for Congress, they're so disconnected, okay? And so if you really want to make changes in the world, you've got to start with yourself. You have to be connected. One of the things I learned recently is the Japanese people think that salt is sacred, okay? And of course, indigenous people and many other people believe that water is sacred. The Pyramid Lake people, Paiute, oh boy, that water's important to them. So I know a woman, she uses it to bless people all the time. So if you combine water and salt, that's what, 70% of our bodies?
Yeah, more.
So we're sacred.
Nice.
Huh? Where's the disconnect happen? How do we become disconnected from our sacredness? See? There's something wrong. When we disconnect from ourselves, we disconnect from everyone. And so right now, our country is disconnected. Our leaders, all they see is dollar bills and control. And we vote for them. We put them in office. We even have someone running for Congress that's been convicted. Where is this disconnect coming from? We've all suffered a little bit of this, haven't we? It's taken my whole life to get healed. When I think of ethics, what comes to mind is that I was given horrible history when I was in school. I was told that I was a savage, good for nothing, cruel, killer, murderer. I didn't learn anything about my people until I got out of college. Okay? And the thinking was we had nothing to offer. That taught me we're good for nothing. And also one group thinks we're cursed. That really hurt. And I realized I had an atheist mentor who told me, don't buy into that. You buy into that, you're going to destroy yourself. And he told all of us people, kids of color at Westminster College, not to buy into that. And so I didn't. So lo and behold, I learned that my people were not starving and destitute, as the picture was described, until they were pushed out from their food source. Utah Valley, 30% of their diet was fish, Bonneville, June sucker, and other species. After we were pushed out, then we were starving and destitute. And I learned recently, thanks to Rosemary Susset, a scientist that studied the Ute people, she determined that we actually managed the fisheries. We appointed fish captains to Utah Lake, Fish Lake, and Sevier Lake to determine the spawn. That would determine how many people we would invite for the fish harvest. My people were managing resources way back then. When settlers arrived, our people were really reluctant to let them fish. Before long, they were using throw nets and hauling out wagon loads of fish, shipping them to Salt Lake daily. And it wasn't long before the lake was no longer had any cutthroat trout and other species. And in a few more years, it was polluted to this day. So I guess what I'm saying to you folks is when it comes to ethics, we got to look at the truth. My people weren't perfect either. One of my ancestors was a slave trader. He traded horseless Indians for horses and for loot for himself and his band. We weren't perfect, okay? But we did have some good qualities too. You all aren't perfect, by the way. I've lived long enough to find that out. But we aren't either. But we have something to offer.
Yeah, thank you all. Did anyone else want to add, or?
Maybe just, I think Olivia, I really liked also what you had to say, right, about like how daunting this is, these structural changes. And just speaking for me personally, I do think like reading a lot of like indigenous thinkers and philosophers has really, I think, changed my perspective on that, including, I think, what you just said, right, that I think that if you look at the history of like settler colonialism, right, it's obviously horrific and it's ongoing, but it is also, of course, a story of perseverance and of, right, like change and ingenuity. And right, that I think if you take this kind of long view, right, which I think we currently live in a very presentist culture, right, that is like completely in the now, but one of the things, many things that indigenous cultures have to offer is just also that they've always taken the long view in some ways, and I think it's important to do that, right? I mean, if you just think about, like, I guess the development of the still tentative, still worthy of, like, still in need of improvement democratic structures we have right now, right? They're not perfect, but if you would have told somebody in Europe in the 16th or 17th century, right, that you could ever just grow up working class and, at least you'd have a shot, right, at some point being in power in some way, they just would not have believed it, right? They would have said, how is that? That's never going to happen. Or, if you would have told, an enslaved, right, like African or African American, in the early 19th, 18th century, right, like one day, we might have a black president. And they, again, would have said, no, I can't see how that could possibly happen. And so I do think that it's important to have imagination, but maybe also have some form of faith, right? And I don't mean kind of blind faith in the sense of like, oh, somebody will take care of it, right? But that somehow if we work together to do good things and good actions, that things might happen that we maybe cannot imagine yet, right? And that things will actually happen that are good. And it will take sacrifice, and it will not be a straight route, right? I think it will zigzag, and the pendulum will swing back and forth, like we see today with civil rights, for example, but that eventually we'll get to a better place. And it's not guaranteed, but I think we can look at historical examples and say it can happen, and it'll never be perfect, but it could be much better, and that's up to us.
The other thing is we have to have a vision, right? So we want to change things, folks. We got to start visualizing that change in our heads. This is the way it's going to be, and focus on that every day, and fight the good fight. That's what I do.
And I'll add, be persistent, like, especially listening to the professor over here and to you, like what we can learn from water. If you want to envision, like, look at the water, look into the crystal ball, like, envision the future, be reflective, but also be persistent. And that's probably, thinking about like the incredible, daunting reality of having the kind of future that we need to thrive, to truly honor and respect each other and the natural and more than human world in the ways that it's needed but not given fully right now, is going to require as much persistence as it will hope and imagination. And water's got to be the most persistent thing on this planet, right? Like, water made the Grand Canyon, water shaped these valleys, water impressed like probably billions of tons of sand into Grand Staircase Escalante for it to be smushed, and then erased away over thousands of more years so that we can find T-Rex bones today, right? Y'all, like, water did that. And so maybe besides to move away from my my Debbie Downer reflection earlier, it's like, yeah, be freaking persistent, be like water.
Yeah, I love that.